Hey, how are you, Anthony? All right, is everybody ready? Anybody need a second? Solomon, are we good? All right. Good morning, and thank you all for being here for what is often our Monday community press conference. As you know, these are often focused upon gun violence. And sadly, we had a bad weekend this last weekend. As of today, this remains the year when on the 12th of May, we have the lowest number of homicides in the last 50-plus years, according to all the data that I can see. Nevertheless, that doesn't mean a whole lot to people who have been affected by shootings, fatal and not fatal, by homicide by stabbing, one of which has occurred very recently. The numbers are hard to hear when the pain is real, and the pain is real. So we are here, among other things, to provide investigative and prosecutorial updates on certain violent crime, mostly shootings, that occurred over the weekend. Our Philadelphia Police Department, Sheriff's Office, local, state, and federal criminal justice partners continue to do a fantastic job at prioritizing public safety and anti-violence enforcement work, as well as on prevention to reduce crime in the city of Philadelphia. There is much we cannot say today, but there definitely are things that we can say. We appreciate that community-based organizations, including 501c3 nonprofits, faith-based institutions, and victim services groups, including the ones that are outside of this office all over the city, for whom we are advocating more resources, and just did that in City Council last week. They continue to do a really important job in helping communities heal and individuals heal through proactive trauma support, which of course also tends to reduce retaliatory shootings in Philadelphia. I'm not going to spend much time on the data, other than to say at my last look, we were at 74 homicides, and that is 21% less than last year. Last year, of course, Philadelphia led the nation among big cities in positive reductions in homicide, and last year was also the year in the history of the United States when we saw the biggest percent decrease in homicides ever. So to be down from that is remarkable, but none of that speaks to the pain and the violence that occurred this weekend for anyone who was involved. We are here as a united front with the police department, with the sheriff's office, with members of city council, and of course with the attorneys in this office and the staff who work on behalf of survivors and victims, and frankly have been working hard throughout the weekend. We are here with them to make sure there's a very clear message about these crimes, this violence, in one case stabbing, but in all other cases shootings, that these are unacceptable, that if you engage in this activity you will be caught and you will pay the appropriately lengthy sentence that these crimes merit. Those who commit crimes in the city will be investigated, arrested, and they will be justly prosecuted. But when you do terrible things, the consequence has to match what it is you have done. And we also want victims and co-victims to know that our robust and compassionate victim services unit, our CARES unit, and our relocations unit are available to support you and your safety and your healing as much as you can heal through the prosecution process and through your journey. I would like to acknowledge some of the great people who are here. We have with us Council Member Anthony Phillips of the 9th District. We are hoping we will have Council Member Curtis Jones of the 4th District. These are busy times in Council. We have Sheriff Rochelle Bilal, and she is here with Roger Jameson, who is Chief of Staff for the Philadelphia Sheriff's Office. On behalf of the Philadelphia Police Department, we have Inspector Ernest Ransom. Thank you for being here, sir. And from the DAO, from the DA's office, we have First Assistant District Attorney Robert Listenby. We have ADA Bob Wainwright, Chief of the DAO's Homicide Non-Fatal Shooting Unit. We have ADA Bill Fritzie, who is the Chief of the DAO's Gun Violence Task Force, and with him, ADA Danielle Berkavage, who is the Chief of the DAO's Intelligence Unit. If you want the spelling, Mr. Fritzie is F-R-I-T-Z-E. Ms. Berkavage is B-U-R-K-A-V-A-G-E, and you'll all correct me if this is wrong. And we also have with us Tania Leonard, who is the Director of the DAO's CARES Unit, and Tracy Washington, who is the Assistant Director of the Victim Services Unit. I'd like to introduce the following people to provide information on the cases themselves. We are going to start with ADA Bob Wainwright, who will be joined by ADA Bill Fritzie and ADA Danielle Berkavage, and they will have at least some comments on the following 5 events. The first one is the shooting of a 12-year-old. The second is a shooting, then that was fatal. The second one is a shooting in Kensington, also. That's a stabbing. Oh, I'm sorry, pardon me. The second one is a stabbing, a vicious domestic stabbing that occurred in Kensington, also fatal. The third one is a shooting, fatal shooting, at Chadwick and Huntington Streets. The fourth one is a non-fatal shooting at 3601 Broad Street. The fifth one is a shooting at 33rd and Girard Avenue. That is the SEPTA shooting involving 4 victims. It was a non-fatal shooting. Mr. Bob Wainwright is going to address the first 3 of them, and then we will hear from Bill Fritzie on the shooting at 3601 Broad, and we will hear from Danielle Berkavage on the shooting at 33rd and Girard Avenue. Please understand that many of these cases are very, very actively being investigated. So there are limits to what we can say, but the public is entitled to know what's going on as much as we can convey it without damaging the integrity of these investigations and without adversely affecting anything in the lives of victims, survivors, and the communities affected. At this time, once we hear from them, we will then move on with other speakers. However, at this time, I would ask Bob Wainwright, Bill Fritzie, and Danielle Berkavage to please come forward together and speak on these cases.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The first case that I'll address is a murder that occurred on Saturday afternoon, 6:30 p.m., the area of 2500 Chadwick Street. The decedent in that case is a man who was about to celebrate his 25th wedding anniversary, James Bigelow. The defendant is in custody. This appears based on video. Based on my conversations with the assigned detective, it's been expertly investigated by the assigned lead detective, Sean Jang, is that this was stemmed from a dispute over the way the defendant was perhaps driving. The decedent was a pedestrian. The defendant was driving a vehicle. What began as just an oral argument led to the defendant getting out of his car with a gun visible. The decedent appears to see that gun. Physical altercation ensues, which results in the defendant firing 7 shots. The defendant was arrested later that night. Based on the video, Detective Jang and other investigators were able to quickly ascertain the individual associated with that vehicle, which led them to an address. The defendant was arrested wearing the same clothes only hours after the incident. And he is in custody. He has been charged with murder generally and related gun charges. Another case that happened over the course of the weekend was a decedent who was only 12 years old. His name is Ethan Parker. The defendant in that case is a 17-year-old, 1 month shy of his 18th birthday. His name is Marvin Playfair, Playfair. There's been reports that this was due to, this happened during the course of the making of a music video. Based on my conversations with the assigned detectives, I believe they were actually in the course of making music, not making a music video, but there will be certainly more information in terms of what exactly they were doing, and all electronic equipment was recovered by the police in this case. Either way, the 12-year-old was shot one time in the chest and died a short time later. This was a gun that had a hammer, and the defendant has been charged with third-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, possession of a firearm by a minor. It's an incredibly sad case. The 12-year-old's 15-year-old brother was also present when this happened. But based on the defendant's familiarity with this gun, the fact that there's evidence that this is a gun that he had in previous occasions, there is evidence that the defendant had a history with not just this gun, but other guns. There was a .40 caliber magazine recovered from the home as well. This occurred inside the home of the 17-year-old. Based on those factors, including also evidence that the defendant had even pointed guns at other people on prior occasions, the defendant was charged with third-degree murder under the theory of the reckless aspect of that if you point a gun at somebody and you pull the hammer back or you pull the trigger, whichever of those is what happened, and the gun goes off, you having full reason to know that it's loaded, likely perhaps even loaded it yourself, that you're responsible for that murder, and it is in fact a murder. The other case that was mentioned was a stabbing case. That's an open investigation being expertly investigated by the assigned detective, Craig Coulter. And because there's been no arrest in that case, I won't speak any further on that one.
Hi, I'm Danielle Berkavich. I'm the chief of the intelligence unit here at the Gun Violence Task Force. I'm going to talk briefly about the shooting that took place on May 10th at 6:14 p.m. On the SEPTA bus at 33rd and Girard Avenue. So 22nd District Police responded. There were 4 shooting victims in that case that took place on the bus. There are 3 of the victims are juveniles, 1 is an adult. Again, just like Mr. Wainwright said, this case is being actively investigated by the Shooting Investigation Group of the Philadelphia Police Department. We will be working with them to get to an approval for an arrest warrant, and we anticipate that we will get there, and the person responsible for the shooting will be in custody and handled by the Gun Violence Task Force. That's all I have on that one. Also, additionally, there were 9 fired cartridge casings on that case as well.
I think the only other matter that was discussed was the shooting at 3601 South Broad Street. There was a 77-year-old man. 3rd District officers responded to the scene, and they were able to transport him to a local hospital. At this time, this investigation is still ongoing. We await word from Shooting Investigation Group and our partners, our detective partners there. But given the nature of the offense and the limited information we have, we would just hold off on any questions or further information on those cases.
Thank you all. We will next hear from the following speakers, and in this order. First, we'll hear from law enforcement, Police Inspector Ernest Ransom, and Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. Assuming that they wish to make comments, are welcome to do so. After that, we will hear from people who provide victim witness support and services. We'll hear from Tania Leonard and Tracy Washington. One or both of them will speak. And then the final group will be elected officials, Councilmember Anthony Phillips, and if he should make it, Councilmember Curtis Jones. But we will start with Police Inspector Ransom and then Sheriff Rochelle Bilal.
First of all, good morning. I'm Staff Inspector Ernest Ransom, the Commanding Officer of the Homicide Unit. District Attorney Krasner, thank you for having me here. As the District Attorney has stated very eloquently, our crime in terms of homicides are down, especially since last year. Our clearance rate is up, but one homicide is one too many, as you know. If there is a message I wanted to give out to the juveniles or anyone who wants to play with guns or think guns are toys, don't do it. This tragic incident that happened with the juvenile over the weekend was in fact tragic. I will express this to all the juveniles out there. I'll tell you what I tell my sons when they were younger. Whenever you go over a house and if there's a gun out, someone's playing with a gun, showing a gun, acting like the gun is a toy, whatever the case may be, get out the house and run and call 911. These are not toys. They're not meant to be played with. And if you cannot legally possess a gun, you should not have a gun. Again, this is a tragic incident, ultimately resulting in an arrest, but also the loss of a life. Again, please, if you guys can echo that sentiment out, that'd be fantastic. And that's really all I have. You have any questions for me?
We'll take questions at the end.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just holding your questions to the end for the inspector, I would appreciate it.
Good morning. I'm Rochelle Bilal, Sheriff for the City and County of Philadelphia. Thank you, D.A. Krasner, for having us here. Today, we mourn the heartbreaking and senseless loss of a 12-year-old child in North Philly. An innocent life taken far too soon. As Sheriff of the city and as a mother, my heart aches for this young life cut short and for the family now left to carry this unimaginable grief. A child should never have to live in fear, never. A child should never be a victim of violence. We extend our deepest condolences to the loved ones of this child, and we stand with them in sorrow, in prayer, in our continued commitment to justice. The Philadelphia Sheriff's Office remains steadfast in its mission to reduce gun violence and improve public safety. As part of that commitment, our office continues to provide free gun safety locks, free gun safety locks to any resident in need. These are available at our office at 100 South Broad Street, 5th floor, because secure storage can prevent tragedy and save lives. When we say free gun locks, we are not running you. We are not asking you for ID. We are not questioning you. We want you to get a free gun lock and lock up the gun to keep you and your family safe. We also continue to work in partnership with the local law enforcement, elected officials, and community organizations to address the root causes of violence and stop the flow of illegal firearms into our neighborhoods. But we cannot do this alone. This is a call to action for all of us, parents, educators, faith leaders, and public servants alike. We must come together to create a safe space for our children to live and to play and to learn and to grow. Let us honor this young life of those of many others, not just with words, but with real, sustained action. Get involved, stop the guns. Thank you.
Thank you to the inspector who does such great work and whose team does such great work, often working very closely with our homicide non-fatal shooting unit. Thank you to Sheriff Bilal, who's been such an excellent partner with his office in anti-violence work and in bringing in fugitives. And also, because I neglected to mention him, thank you to Chief of Staff for the Sheriff, Roger Jameson, for being here as well. At this time, I'd like to call forward Tania Leonard and Tracy Washington, who do victim services, victim protective work in this office, to say a few words.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Tania Leonard, and I serve as the Director of the Crisis Assistance, Response, and Engagement for Survivors Unit, also known as CARES. CARES is a specialized unit that provides immediate crisis support and intervention in the wake of a homicide in Philadelphia. Our peer crisis responders work closely with the District Attorney's executive team, as well as with trusted community agencies to assist families and survivors during their most difficult moments. Whether at the hospital or in the community, our goal is to be present and compassionate and supportive. The CARES team is often amongst the first to learn of a violent incident and to respond to communities in crisis. We offer short-term, trauma-informed support to survivors and co-survivors as they begin to process and cope with the shock of losing a loved one to violence. We've seen firsthand the meaningful impact that early empathetic intervention can have on a person's sense of stability, well-being, and path to a new normal. Just this weekend, our team responded to several incidents in the community, including the tragic loss of Ethan Parker. We met his family at Einstein Hospital, where we were able to provide immediate comfort and begin a conversation around both current and future resources for the family. I personally spoke with Ethan's mother, and we're scheduled to visit with her later on today. We also responded to incidents involving the families of James Bigelow and Kadir Johnson in hopes to ensure that they were met with compassion during their time of unimaginable grief. At this moment, our team is doing home visits with these families. At CARES, we remain deeply committed to standing beside families in their most vulnerable moments, helping them feel seen, heard, and supported. While violence may fracture communities, but the connection, real human connection, we can use to begin to heal them. Thank you for your continued partnership, and as we strive to bring light to comfort and dignity for those walking in grief.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tracy Washington, and I'm the Assistant Director of Support Services for Victim Services. I'm sending our heartfelt thoughts and my deepest sympathies to all those affected by gun violence this weekend. It's a heartbreaking reminder of how precious life is and how urgently we need compassion, support, and meaningful change. I'm honored to be a part of a district attorney's office who's an agent of change. Under the leadership of the Director, Mariel De La Cruz of Victim Services, we lead a compassionate team that supports survivors through every stage of the criminal justice process. From the moment charges are filed, through the court proceedings, sentencings, and even during the appeal process, we stand beside victims and their families, offering consistent information, emotional support, and a voice within the justice system. Our unit provides a wide range of services during the criminal legal process: court accompaniments, crisis intervention, safety planning, referrals to counseling, and emergency resources, and assistance with victim compensation. These supports are not just available, they are a right, and we are committed to proactively reaching out to families affected by this weekend's events to ensure they receive them. In addition to our internal team, we are grateful for our 9 external contracted victim service providers. These dedicated community partners extend our reach and offer specialized services, culturally competent care, language access, housing assistance, legal aid, and trauma-informed counseling. They are a critical part of our continuum of care. We are here for every survivor, for every family member, today, tomorrow, and as long as it takes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments, and thank you so much for the work that you do all the time, including Mariel De La Cruz, who is here in spirit, if not in person. Speaking of which, here in spirit with us is Councilmember Kurt Jones, who has been an excellent partner with his office, Director of Public Safety, worked on the 100 shooter report. I know him, and I know if he's not here, the only reason is something truly emergent has come up. But we are blessed to have another excellent partner with this office in our work around enforcement and also in our work around prevention, most recently appearing with us in relation to short dumping. But he has been an excellent partner with us from the beginning and cares deeply for reasons many of you will know if you know his biography about young people and about preventing violence among young people. And that is our partner and friend here, Councilmember Anthony Phillips.
I want to thank the district attorney for his steadfast leadership on matters of importance like this, so thank you so much. I'm Anthony Phillips, and I represent Philadelphia's 9th District, which is where Ethan Parker lived and resided. Ethan was 12 years old, West Oak Lane, and a young boy who had opportunities that were coming his way to graduate from school, 8th grade graduation, to go to high school prom, and to also take on a career and maybe college and so forth after he graduated from high school. All of that is gone. Why? Because there was another teenager who had a gun in their hands. Someone knew that that teenager had a gun. Someone in the neighborhood, someone in his school, someone place of work, someone knew that this young man was carrying a gun. And instead of calling on individuals like us, people in council, people in the state government, or even other individuals who are providing intervention to work with this young man to get that gun out of his hand, we now have a 12-year-old whose mother had to celebrate Mother's Day, didn't even get a chance to celebrate Mother's Day, had to spend Mother's Day without her son. And that's going to be a memory that's going to be in her mind forever. And now this teenager, though a minor, is now going to be spending some time in prison when all of that could have been prevented. It's not funny, everyone. What we're asking the city and the residents to say is that it's not fun, it's not exciting, there's no joy in the loss of young ones. Because even if I knew that teenager had a gun, our office would have found a way to work with them, to found a way to mentor, support them, get them to in front of a caring and a loving adult. So what we're missing here today in Philadelphia is that our young people are crying out for guidance, they're crying out for opportunity, and we have to get it to them. Because Ethan Parker could have been alive today if a resident of our city stood up and said, let's get this young man who unfortunately shot him, some help. That's what we need in our city. And I'm proud to work with our district attorney, our sheriff, and others who are doing care work to make sure that we work with the young people that are needed so we can support them so tragedies don't happen like this, not only in our district, but throughout the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you again to all the speakers here. Your input, your information is truly appreciated. I do want to just come back to two of them, though. Not because they're more important or less important, but because they'll be doing a lot of work today. And that's Tania Leonard and Tracy Washington. Our office is in close contact with victims and survivors of these terrible, violent incidents, including family of the 12-year-old who was killed. And we want you to know that we will continue to provide all of them with every service that they may need. And everyone knows there's a whole lot of services needed, with every type of protection that they may need, and to try to, as much as we can, mitigate the horrific events that have occurred in their lives. That is what members of this office who do that work and others outside of this office who are under contract with this office will be doing as well. And at this time, we are prepared to answer any questions we can. And by we, I mean everyone here. A lot of the most specific information on these particular cases is in the hands of people who are in this office or outside of this office. I'll answer what I can, but more importantly, I would like to make sure you get answers from the people who are closest to the information. All right. And therefore, in no particular order of importance, but in the order on my paper, Dan Snyder, Channel 3 CBS.
Hey, good morning. I was looking to see if anybody had an update on the Kadir Johnson shooting. I believe it was Evan Luzerne yesterday. I didn't hear that one come up.
We did not actually raise it. I know that we do have some information. Let me just see if we have comment that we can provide. All right. Do we have any comments that we can provide?
Got it here.
There can be no comments. So we are not back here because we don't know what to say. We are back here because it's an active, ongoing investigation. We're trying to figure out if we can tell you more than that. So if you'll just bear with us for a few seconds.
Yes. So as DA said, it's an active investigation. And there's not much that we can say at this time. There's obviously no arrest has been made, but this was the murder that you're referring to, Quadir Johnson, which was in the news because this person was a known rapper in the community. And he was shot and killed yesterday at about 4:30 p.m. I'm just going to, because the fact Detective Byard, the assigned detective, is working on it, and there's a lot of detectives, a lot of police working on this case right now. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Mr. Snyder, I know that might not have been all the information one would like, but do you have any other questions, or? Good. All right, thank you. Isabel Sanchez, 10 Telemundo.
Hey, Fiscal, I'm going to ask you in Spanish. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. If you could give us un overview de lo que nos comentó hoy acerca de la violencia, that it's decreasing, pero que todavía se sigue viendo y lo que significa para las comunidades.
Lo que vemos hoy es que claro que hay menos violencia y menos violencia de armas que antes, incluso el año pasado. Desafortunadamente tuvimos una fin de semana donde había un grupo de casos de violencia y por eso estamos aquí discutir los detalles y para asegurar que sepa la comunidad que hay investigaciones activas, que estamos en el proceso junto con nuestros socios de tratar de proveer ayuda a las familias de las víctimas y vamos a saber más sobre estos casos en el futuro. Of course. Lauren Make, Channel 10 NBC.
Good morning, and two things. First of all, on the 12-year-old victim case, there were a number of references to the defendant and guns in the past, and previous experience with guns. As you know, how to handle gun possession has been a debate in the city. Were there missed opportunities to avoid this?
Well, I mean, there's really no debate that juveniles are not supposed to touch guns. I mean, that is black letter law. It's very straightforward. And there's also no debate that we have a Criminal Justice Act that does not allow us to speak freely about whether or not there have been any prior juvenile matters in many cases. I am in no way suggesting there were, but I am just telling you that those are the guardrails on my highway about what it is that I can talk about. Having said that, I do want to consult with those closest to the case to see if there's information that they are able to provide consistent with the law and consistent with the integrity of the investigation. If you'd like, whoever would like to weigh in on this, please do. Inspector, I won't slow you down.
I thought that Councilmember Phillips and Inspector Ransom's comments about just guns in general and the playing with guns were incredibly important to hear. Regarding what I mentioned earlier about the defendant's history of guns, the assigned detective, when I was approving charges on Saturday evening on this case, and Detective McKenna, one of the things that we learned was that the defendant, Marvin Playfair, on a social media account had at least one photo of him with this exact same gun. It's a very unique looking gun. It actually had like a Michael Jordan, Air Jordan sticker on it with rubber bands and that hammer, old school hammer. So there was direct evidence that this was the defendant's gun, and in fact he did, after initially stating that it wasn't his gun. He did later admit that it was his gun. And there was also statements taken from various individuals connected to both the decedent and the defendant that they had seen the defendant not just with this firearm, but with other firearms in the past as well. So, but the defendant didn't have any prior gun cases. He had no prior arrests. So that just brings me back to my first point, which is what Inspector Ransom and Councilmember Phillips points why they're so important, that if you see people with guns and these are kids. I mean, the person who committed the shooting was older. He was 17. I think his 18th birthday is next month. But he's doing this, making music with 12-year-old and 15-year-old. This was obviously, I mean, it's an incredibly preventable tragedy on so many levels. And I thought their points were really important, that if you see people with guns, you need to tell the authorities. Sorry, I'll let you speak.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to comment on that even further. Thank you for addressing that too. It is very important that residents report anonymously about guns, because it's impossible for us as public officials to know every single person who has a gun. We only know what information is reported to us. I'll give you a prime example. Our district, there was someone that was hanging around a school that was an adult that looked very suspicious, like somebody could be a potential predator. Our office got right on it right away and is now working with the school district to make sure that that person is no longer going to be able to circle a school building on a day-to-day basis. If our office gets reports about someone or entity or organization, people who are doing something that is illegal or anything with guns, we can now help and report them to the right entities so that we can make sure tragedies like this don't even happen. Our office has also been welcoming to young people for mentorship, internships, and also providing them with other after-school opportunities that can get them the mental health support as well as the caring and loving support that they need. But unfortunately, we need the public, because our federal and state government is not going to give us the laws that we need in Philadelphia to prevent handguns from being in the hands of juveniles. So it's going to be us doing this as a village and as a community. So in some ways, this is a call to action. But when you do it right, when you actually report it to authorities, most of the times we can actually get to that individual as quickly as possible to support them. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bob Listenby. I'm DA Krasner's first assistant. I just want to say I supervise the juvenile units and cases involving kids with guns. Last year, we had almost 2,000 juvenile cases in total. 25% of those cases involve kids with guns. We have a major problem here in our city. The prevention efforts described by Councilmember Phillips, described by Inspector Ramsey, described by Sheriff Allow, are things that we desperately need in our city to follow. Without those prevention efforts, these young people are going to be finding themselves in all kinds of situations involving guns where they're going to get hurt. We need to do everything we can on the prevention side to prevent these kids from using these guns, from getting these guns, and from playing with these guns. We're just beginning to address this problem. This is much worse. From what I've seen, my 30 years involved with juveniles in the city, this is the highest level of juveniles with guns that I have seen. We need to do something about it, and we need to be very aggressive about it.
I just have a comment because, I do think it's important, if we're looking at the elephant, we look at the whole elephant. Here are a couple facts, because there's a lot of people who talk about this issue and they prefer fiction. Here are the facts. There were about 800,000 guns legally sold in Pennsylvania last year, legally. Law enforcement did their best, and they did a great job. Do you know how many were taken off the street last year by law enforcement? Anybody want to guess? 6,000, 7,000? 17,000. And that, includes Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, which were the two main locations where the guns were taken, more guns taken in Philadelphia than other places for obvious reasons. So our net increase in guns legally purchased was about 783,000 last year. Anybody who thinks that this is all going to get solved by law enforcement taking guns off the street, frankly, is missing the boat. The remarkable thing is that that pattern, and those numbers don't even include ghost guns, they don't even include illegal sales, that pattern has left Pennsylvania in the position of being the supplier of crime guns to New Jersey and New York, and they remind us of it all the time, and they're right. They should remind us of it all the time, because the people in Pennsylvania, in the legislature, who do not want sensible gun regulation, are also the same people who have made certain states have a much higher level of homicide. And now I'm going to tell you a fact that is totally contrary to the fiction that has been put out there for a very long time. Here's a fact. There's a group of states where the people in leadership love guns. Those states, over the last 25 years, have been more dangerous 24 of those 25 years. Those states, for 25 years, on average, have a homicide rate that is 133% of the average homicide in the states that take a more careful approach to guns. Those states, the ones where you have all of that extra killing, you have all of that extra love for guns, they're known as Republican states. They are the states that in the prior presidential election voted for the Republican candidate for president. Have you ever heard that? Has anybody ever said that to you? Or are we going to continue to read polling that says, gee whiz, I can rely on Donald Trump, I can rely on George W. Bush for safety? Let me just say it again. The states where you are in less danger of gun violence, less danger of homicide, are the ones that try to have sensible gun regulation. They're called democratic states. So those are the facts. Let's get past the fiction. Let's get past the idea that all by itself, law enforcement is going to solve this when our legislators continue to stuff money in their pockets from the NRA and flood the zone with guns, which, guess what? If you have way more guns than people, which we do, they're going to get into the hands of juveniles too. It is not an either or. This is a yes and. We need to have effective enforcement. We need to have effective prevention, but we also need to have effective laws. And frankly, what the Pennsylvania legislature, which has voted for the Republican candidate 2 of the last 3 elections for president, what the Pennsylvania legislature has done is reckless, it is disgraceful, and it causes violence in our cities. All right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
One more thing that relates to my previous question. When you look at the violent incidents, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, most of them are not in the middle of the night. One was before midnight, some were in the middle of the day. Does that tell you anything?
The honest answer is I don't know. I know that we have the lowest number of homicides on this date that we've had in over 50 years, despite the continuing status as the poorest of the 10 largest cities, despite there being more guns on the ground every single day than there were the day before. I know that. I don't want to say it is meaningless, but I do want to say, you know, when we study crime and we study criminology, which this office takes very, very seriously, you will see these ups and downs that will occur, and they occur in short time frames. They occur with limited data. I don't know whether it says something significant to look at a period of a few days and draw conclusions from the timing of those incidents. Mr. Cole.
Do you know what the Philly, you were talking about guns taken off the street last year. Do you know what the Philly numbers were?
I believe it was 12,000.
In the city of Philadelphia?
Yes.
I wanted to ask about guns. You guys have spoken significantly about guns, but let me just, you've talked about the legislature not willing to pass, the kind of gun regulations you think would work here. You're not going to get those rights. It's just simply not going to happen. You can read the numbers just like I can. So it is truly up to what happens here versus what's going to happen statewide, because it doesn't look like there's any effort to regulate guns, correct?
Well, I decline to accept a world where elected officials of whatever party are off the hook. I decline to accept the notion that certain people, for their own political benefit, can just keep promoting their careers with a pile of money in the back pocket from opioid manufacturers and from the NRA. I decline to accept that. Those people, if they are going to put their own futures ahead of the futures of 12-year-olds, should be voted out. They should be replaced. They should be gone. That's the reality of what should be going on. And I intend to keep speaking the truth until somebody listens, rather than simply acquiesce to irresponsible conduct by certain legislators that apparently feeds a base that pays no attention to science or fact.
Can I follow?
Yes, sir.
You talked about crime is down and clearance rates are up, but this kind of violence popping up as the weather warms and kids are out of school, particularly again among young kids does this indicate a trend for you the other way? That it could be turning in some way?
Here's the reality. One of the reasons I speak so often about year-to-date data, meaning what happened a year ago on May the 12th? What happened 2 years ago on May the 12th? When I say to you, we have the lowest number of homicides that we've had in over 50 years on May the 12th, that is because criminologists for a very long time have used year-to-date data to screen out things like, well, when do schools close as a factor, to screen out when does it get warm as a factor. There's a clear association, always has been, between warm weather and increases in criminal activity, especially violent crime. Certainly, it is indicative of the reality that in every city across the country, or at least all the ones affected by warm weather, where the weather gets warmer, it is likely to follow the usual annual trends of crime increases. Certainly, there is a lot of evidence that having open classrooms is a positive factor in the prevention of crime. And, and this is, I'm not throwing blame at anybody, but the reality is, American public schools are not open all summer in general. Generally, we try to have our kids do other stuff. Some of that other stuff is not available to people who are growing up in communities that are deprived in different ways. So, the conclusion I think we can draw is that Philadelphia at this time is doing better on this date than it's done on this date for the last 50 years, but this is a terrible weekend. I mean, it's very upsetting. We chose to make it the topic of this press conference because Philadelphia needs to know what's going on. I am concerned, very concerned, in fact, about what has been going on with juveniles when it comes to access to guns and when it comes to gun violence. We have been concerned about this for years. The curious, interesting news is that we've seen a reduction in violent gun-related crime between the ages of about 18 and 22, or 18 and 25. We are simultaneously seeing more young people getting arrested who are below 18, and I say arrested for a reason, and a dip in the number who are getting arrested between ages 18 and about 25. Exactly what that means, I don't know. I can tell you it is of tremendous concern. And we also have reports that there are some people and some shooting groups who are trying to recruit juveniles. They're actively trying to prey on the reality that their judgment is not perfect, and frankly that in general scientific terms, they're not mentally mature until they get closer to 25. That's despicable. Let me tell you, if I get a hold of somebody who's doing things like that, some adult who's trying to lure in juveniles to involve them in group activity at a time when we're seeing historic lows in violent activity, there's going to be quite a price to pay for that because that conduct is utterly despicable. Kristen Johansson, KYW.
Yes, we have two questions. One is, I think this first one's for Ms. Ransom, the 98-year-old man who was found and homicide detectives, I guess, are investigating. He had a cut or something like that on his, or something was on his forehead. Do you have any more information about that?
I do not. I do not.
Talking about?
Just give me a little more deep.
Let's go back into the blurb. This is the 98-year-old man who was found, I guess, inside his living room steps. It says that homicide's investigating. It was in the 15th district on the Boulevard on Sunday, last night around 11:15.
So that is still an active investigation. Of course, I can't give you any more information than that.
Was there any, like, did it seem like it was assaulted, though? This is being actively investigated by homicide is, that's my biggest question.
Well, based on the information I have, it does look like it's some type of assault. What exactly, I can't get into it right now. Again, that's an active investigation.
And do you know if there was a robbery or anything?
From all indication, there was no robbery.
Okay.
But again, that can change based on the investigation. And just to piggyback real quick, I think it should be noted that in terms of juveniles involved in homicides or being victims of homicide, we're actually down 42%. It's a trend. It's a good trend. I mean, again, one homicide is one too many, but again, the numbers are what they are. We're down 42% from 18 and below.
Thank you. And then the next question is for the DA. We're hearing that two top people from the Conviction Integrity Unit and the Civil Litigation Unit last week, left your office. Do you have any comments about that or what happened?
I do. So Mike Garmisa and Kerry Wood have been in the leadership of the Conviction Integrity Unit now for a period of years. They've done great work. They're very talented. They've worked extremely hard. And one of the remarkable things about this office having become a national leader when it comes to conviction integrity work and when it comes to the kind of work that we do proactively to prevent convictions of innocent people in the future is that they're very much in demand. So both Mr. Garmisa and Kerry Wood, whose private business is not mine to tell you, have really exciting next chapters, very exciting opportunities that they're moving on to do, and I think that's great, because ultimately it's not just about what happens in this office, it's also about the impact this office can have when it comes to conviction integrity around the country. To me, that is all very, very positive. So we wish them the best, and frankly, the door is open. They're welcome to come back anytime. One of them actually came back previously for a period of time. They are welcome to come back anytime because of the excellent work that they have done.
So do you have any, is Brian taking your place or do you have any full time?
We have not finalized that information. In the same way, there's much interest in, the talented leadership of the unit. There's much interest in joining the unit, including from candidates around the country. So we will have more information on that in the near future.
Additionally, the head of the Civil Litigation Unit?
Yes, Dan Margolski, also a guy who did amazing work here and is moving on to a really positive opportunity. Dan is a fascinating guy. I could get into his whole bio, but he has been doing extremely high-level, remarkable work. Did it before he got here, did it after he came here, and is moving on, in a very amicable way with my blessing and with an open door to return if that opportunity presents. He's just done great work here. All right, let me see. Mr. Torrejon.
I have a few questions about the 12-year-old shooting. Just to clarify, so first of all, were they filming a music video, or as PA Wainwright said, was it just music? And also, I had a question about if it was, I guess, this obviously affects the disposition of charges, but was it accidental? From what I heard and told, this 17-year-old Marvin Playfair dancing around with a gun as part of this filming or recording, and then a discharge. It's unclear if it's accidental, intentional. Again, the charges.
Well, let me just comment on it briefly, and then I think Mr. Wainwright should provide any additional answer he may have. I don't know if he is able to because it's very active. Sadly, there is a very long history, at least during my career, which is now 37 years, 38 years. There's a very long history of kids firing loaded guns under circumstances that are either, truly accidental or involve a level of negligence, a level of recklessness, a level of criminal recklessness, repeated activity. And the criminal law is in large part based upon your intent. It doesn't just look at the outcome. It looks at your intent, whether that's a car accident or that's the discharge of a weapon. There are 5 levels of homicide in Pennsylvania. The 3 highest levels are murder. The 2 lowest levels are not murder. The very lowest level is a misdemeanor. And those 5 levels have evolved literally over a few hundred years to recognize differences in mental state. Sometimes that mental state is premeditated, intentional activity. Sometimes that mental state involves levels of criminal negligence or levels of recklessness that are higher than that. This case at the moment if I heard Mr. Wainwright correctly, is charged as a third-degree murder, which signifies a very high level of criminally negligent, mental state to the point where one synonym is that it's wicked, that it's committed in a way that has a level of malice to it. So, you certainly, Mr. Torrejon, are focusing on a key issue, which is if it's accidental, how accidental? If it's intentional, or if it's reckless, how intentional and how reckless? And without getting further into that, I will invite Mr. Wainwright if he wishes to say anything further to supplement that answer.
That's, the DA just gave a very good explanation of the third-degree murder, which isn't just the typical third-degree murder, which is an intentional shooting, but it's a killing with malice, but not an intentional killing. There's another part of third-degree murder, as the DA just said, which involves just an extreme form of recklessness. And that's a situation like what you have here, where Ethan was killed with a 9mm firearm, a P38 Walther, and this is a gun, like I said earlier, that based on social media posts, based on interviews with other people connected to both the decedent and the defendant, that the defendant had a previous history with this specific firearm, and that would suggest that this was a gun that he could well have loaded himself, had every reason to know was loaded, had on a prior date. Not only that, but there were posts showing, there's information to suggest that he has even pointed guns at people in previous occasions. However, based on the information that we have at this time, that I have really from speaking to the detectives who were investigating this in the immediate aftermath, yes, this is definitely an accidental, believed to be an accidental shooting. Now that could change based on additional evidence that's uncovered, but what we have at this time would be that this is an accidental shooting where the degree of recklessness is such that a third-degree murder charge was warranted. And regarding the music video, that was also from speaking with detectives. So this could be incorrect because I saw as well, like you did, that they were making a music video at the time. Based on my conversation with the detectives, including the assigned detective, Detective McKenna, this was not a video that they were making, but they were making music at the time. And some technology was recovered from the home. So we would have an answer to that later on, but that this wasn't a video, they were making music.
Since I have you here on the Peter Johnson case, do you guys believe that he was targeted specifically for his name as a pretty prominent rapper in Philadelphia? And was anything actually stolen? I saw that it was an attempted robbery. It was unclear if they actually ended up stealing some of his gold chains that he had on when he was assaulted and shot.
Not going to comment on that case at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Torrejon. Tom McDonald, WHYY.
Is Mr. Plaintier being charged in adultery?
Yes.
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 Anything else, Mr. McDonald? All right, Sherry Stone, Philadelphia Tribune.
I guess previous question comes out that are there any charges against the parents of the 72-year-old shooter now since he's technically a minor, so for allowing to having the gun in the home. And also, is it true that there were like fake guns around with BB guns and other guns mixed in? Could you have mixed about that in any way?
Okay. Your question is, no, so no, at this time, there's no charges against anyone other than the defendant, the shooter at this time. I mentioned earlier there was a .40 caliber magazine that was recovered in addition to the firearm that was used to kill Mr. Parker, the 12-year-old Ethan Parker.
Anything else, Ms. Stone? Let me see. Geisha Torres, 65 Univision. A little bit later? Okay. And last but never least, Ralph Cipriano of Big Trial.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Good morning.
Mr. Garvisa, Mike Garvisa, and Terry Wood joined Mr. Cummings and Tracy Tripp as recent supervisors of the CIU who have left. I want to ask, is the reason that all these people are leaving the CIU is because faced with a $100 billion hole in the budget, the city solicitor is no longer rolling over in these cases involving allegations of wrongly incarcerated inmates?
Well, I would not describe my colleague, City Solicitor Renee Garcia, as being someone who, quote, rolls over, unquote. I think that is embedded in your question in a way that's quite unfair to the city. And as for why these folks are leaving, they're leaving because they are very, very talented. They have incredible opportunities. Being a public interest lawyer and a public service lawyer is not always the most lucrative, and frankly, there's a ton of pressure. There's a lot of criticism that comes from the old guard. It comes from the status quo. It comes from people who think it's fine to leave an innocent person in jail if it's going to save a couple of dollars, and it's not. That's unjust. I do want to point out, though, that their work has not simply been to get innocent people out of jail or to unearth the truth about cases in which either police or prosecutors hid the truth. Their work has also been to come up with methods that are truly cutting edge to try to avoid these kinds of mistakes in the future, which of course would save the city a whole lot of money in the long run. Cleaning up the mess does mean by the time you're done, you have no mess, or at least you have less of a mess. Some of those techniques have included things like our Brady-Giglio database, which is a database that includes certain police officers who have done some pretty serious stuff, which the Constitution requires us to provide to the defense. Other activity that has occurred in the zone has involved systematically going through the office to try to do essentially an accounting or a reckoning as to whether or not there are continuing practices that are violative of the constitutional requirements of Brady and Giglio. And the information that came back was very positive. It reflected that there had been a real culture change. So, you know, I would never want to clip the wings of a high flyer. These are high flyers. They should soar. They should go and do great work out in the world. I feel the same way about a lot of the very, very talented attorneys who come here who could be making, straight out of law school, $212,000, and they're going to make $70,000. And they had those opportunities. So, you know, I think in no way does this reflect bad news. I think it's very positive news for the country that we have so many experienced, dedicated people trying to improve the quality of justice.
Speaking of not clipping wings, Ms. Cummings was sued last week for defamation, and the month before that, she was requested to appear in Judge Coyle's courtroom, and she refused to show up. The Superior Court is no longer accepting your concessions in appeals of convicted killers. The state Supreme Court is looking into those. The state Attorney General is telling judges through the Commonwealth not to accept your concessions because whenever they're subjected to the adversarial system of justice, quote, they are found wanting. Is this why people are leaving, Mr. President?
Well, thank you for that wildly selective version of the truth, which I... If you don't mind, I'll answer your extremely long paragraph followed by a vague question, okay? So the answer is that every single exoneration was signed off upon by a judge. At last count, our agreements or our support for exonerations have only been rejected twice, and we have 45 that have been accepted. That, to me, is not actually a record of failure. That, to me, is a record of success. If I am not mistaken, the greatest hitter of all time in baseball batted 400. At 45-2, I think we're batting about 950. So I think that we are doing pretty well. I have had a very positive sit-down and conversation with our Republican Attorney General, and I look forward to moving to trying to get some things done outside of the political sphere jointly, and I'm hopeful that that's what's going to happen. If we look at his record so far when it comes to things like commutations, things of that sort. He seems to be actually someone who does understand that certain people, not everyone, but certain people come to a point when they are in custody where it no longer makes sense for them to stay there forever. So I look forward to having a productive relationship with him.
Do you have anything to say in response to the State Attorney General of the brief filed last November, a King's Bench petition now being considered by the State Supreme Court, saying that in 108 sessions that you made in appeals of convicted killers, that these do not stand up to the adversarial system of justice, and judges should no longer trust them and take them at face value? Do you have any response to that, sir? Isn't nonsense about baseball?
I'm sorry, I think baseball is not nonsense. In fact, I have a Phillies cap at home. I support the Phillies. Do you support the Phillies, sir? Because I support the Phillies. I do have an answer. Needless to say, as well, and I'm very sorry, I'll stay here for a minute. Needless to say, you referenced the current Attorney General, and then you tell us about November, when he was not the Attorney General. Who is in charge of the law division at the Attorney General's office, Mr. Cipriano? Do you want to answer that for everyone here, or do you want me to answer it? Do you want to skip that? Oh, okay, so let me see. It would be two people. It would be two people who were either fired by this office or left in a red-hot hurry when I came in. It would be two people who were in leadership here when all of those dirty convictions happened, and all of those dirty convictions were defended by those people. No, they didn't make it up, sir. They didn't make it up. There are some people who want to cover their tracks, sir. I'm not accusing them of anything specific. Your scattershot, shotgun approach of talking about this one and that one and Judge Coyle and that one and this one, certain words just come to mind. One of them is Republican. Another one that comes to mind is involved.
They're questioning your integrity, sir, the integrity of your CIU and your convictions and your concessions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cipriano. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. And when you talk to all your friends who keep suing them, give them my best.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Thanks for nothing.
You're welcome, as always, sir.
Thank you.
I love baseball.